last 15 months.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes, that's also my read on it. I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair. I may have further questions after others have been. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. Another question online, Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just carrying on a little bit further from Councillor Johnson. I see in the last 2 years we haven't even got anywhere near meeting our budget as far as actual goes. With this coming financial year, it's coming financial year, would we be expecting to meet budget as far as actual work done on maintenance?
I'll defer through to Sarah again, unfortunately.
Okay.
She's the...
We did say, because Hamish is the new boy, we thought I will be intervening for at least the first one. So Councillor Finlay, I think that the way we've never communicated well the way that budget timing is undertaken between Rodin and Footpath, but we do tend to do the road-based stuff in the summer and the footpaths at the shoulders, so either at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year. Sometimes, like now, that looks like we haven't spent a lot of money on footpaths when actually we're spending the last 3 months of the year working heavily on footpaths. COVID being what it is, I can't... although Fulton Hogan are working as hard as they can at the moment to spend their money, I can't guarantee that all of it will be spent because COVID has had such a challenging impact. But we do know that they are now sort of up to required resource levels. But we also, just to be clear, the way that we time it, we know that we need to communicate more to you how the timing of the different work elements fits, because it does look like we're right up to the line always on footpaths because we tend to do them in the poorer weather.
Okay, one more question, if I may.
Sure.
It's a question I get asked an awful lot, and I always say, no, we don't. But I'll ask the question because I'd love to have an official answer. Have we ever taken money from the maintenance of footpaths and used it in renewals?
If we were to do that, we would have to come to, as I understand it, if we were to do that, we would have to seek approval to do that, either, depending on the scale of it, I assume from the Chief Exec or from you. So I can't say if we have ever done that in the past, but my understanding of the process is that to move money between budgets, we need to seek approval.
Approval from the CEO or from the council?
Yes, and I'd have to clarify what the... I'd have to clarify to you what the rules are on that. Generally, we just know that we seek approval from someone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett, followed by Councillor Harpiter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Hamish and Chris. The map on page 21. Just interested in terms of how we got to a situation where we had some areas of the city that are in really rough shape, and by reading the report has been that way for years.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer to Chris to answer that one. Thank you.
Yes, it's quite hard for us to answer because neither of us have been in the management of the footpaths since we've been here. All I can really say is that these identify problematic areas that we need to target with Fulton Hogan and address as our priorities. Because they're congregated in the same areas, I guess we can get some efficiencies in targeting them together, so they can do some specifically targeted works.
So, thank you. As looking ahead, next year's budget, can you give us a sense of what proportion will go to grade 4 and 5?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we'd have to look into the rate at which we're repairing, which sections we're repairing, and then compare it with how quickly the network as such is deteriorating. Couldn't give you an exact figure off the top of our head. We do have an inspection booked for later this calendar year, which will directly be able to compare with the 2018 figures, which I think will give us a really good way to target it. And Sarah would like to add a few points, so I'll pass to her.
I'll just say, although all of the roading stuff it has an element of reactiveness in it, in that people send in SnapSend solves or requests for service, the work that we target tends to be the 4s and 5s. That's the condition rating is specifically used to target where we need to do the work.
Thank you. Can I probe that a little bit? And probably the way that I'd do that is by picking on one of the quite specific examples in the report, which identifies 28 faults on Pahiatua Street. And having lived on that street for the last 14 years, I struggle to reconcile the reasonably good footpaths as borne out by the map with a statement that says that we're prioritizing towards grades 4 and 5.
This is all, it is all based on our condition survey. We can come back to you with more information about what that condition, what the condition data is actually flagging, because it flags a variety of things, but it is all based on our condition data. So I'm very happy to bring back to you some information on what it's actually flagged for Pahiatua Street or those streets.
So, to be clear, that was kind of picking on something that's already in train. My interest is in year FY23 and having some evidence in front of us towards the front of the year around how much of our bucket of investment is going to hit class 5, class 4, and to what extent that's distributed through the city. Would it be helpful to have a specific recommendation from committee that brings that to us early in the financial year?
Through the chair, allow me to seek to respond to what I think you're asking for, to check what you're asking for. Much like we did with the road network, we started putting maps on the website to show where the work was going to be in the next year. Would it be helpful if we started to distribute the same information for footpaths, so that, we can also give you the information of how much of that is category 4 and category 5, but so that you can see, for example, whether we are working in the West End area where we've got so many of the faults at the moment. Would it help if we sought early in the next financial year to get some maps to show you where we were working?
Absolutely, and if that doesn't need a recommendation, that's just fine by me.
Yep.
Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hapata.
That last question was covered off by one of mine, but the second question was, not sure if you can answer it, but when you get the queries in, which comes through the K-Base, do you record the number of falls that people have taken? So, and do they, and how serious they have been in nature in terms of injury?
No, we don't. So the K-Base generally goes straight to Ford and Hogan, which they look to action an inspection. But yeah, we don't capture the injury type data.
So if an ambulance is called, we don't record that in K-Base?
No, but I guess if we wanted that data, we would contact, say, the hospital themselves, and they generally would have a capture of those type of instances.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for your report. I have a few questions. My first question is, I understand that this footpath condition assessment is meant to be done after every 2 years and according to certain standards. And I can also see that in 2018, it was not compatible with the Australian Institute standards. Did we lose any money due to that not non-compatible with the institute? Did we lose any money from Whakakotahi due to that result?
As far as I know, no. It's certainly never been mentioned to me as being an issue. So as far as I know, no. But I'll have to go back and check. But based on the fact that no one's ever said to me that that was a problem, I'm assuming no.
Okay, thank you. Number two, when we say that Fulton and Hogan or any company has fixed such number of or more than 200 faults, they have fixed more than 200. What is the definition of a fault? What is the minimum requirement to be called a full job for a fault?
There's a description in the report saying what was considered a fault and what's considered a section renewal. So generally anything under a 5 metre length would be considered a fault, a maintenance repair. Typical things would be like cracks or a little bit of uplift by tree roots, little bits of minor potholes. And so generally minor, small things.
All right, I couldn't understand, but I'll leave it there. My last question is, when we have got some job done by the contractors, are we or the officers checking the work done, 100% work done, or there is a requirement of a few percentage of inspection? And
Want me to answer that one?
Sure, thank you.
Through the chair, we have a quality check process. We require the contractor to quality check their own work, and then we spot check. So we require the contractor to check, then we spot check the checks that they've done, so that we're happy that their compliance process is working. The compliance check process does sometimes pick up problems. So then they go and rectify them. But the process is the general construction process where the contractor is liable to do the work correctly, and they're liable to prove to us that they've done it correctly, and then we check that their checks are working.
so I'm getting that we are not checking 100%, we are relying on contractor on their reports.
Yes, and that is the general construction approach to quality management.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, gentlemen. Couple of questions, and I'm not sure who's going to answer this. So street cleaning, and I include sort of lichen spraying into this as well. Are we doing that? Lichen spraying around footpaths?
Yes, we are, as part of the maintenance.
Okay. Do we have is there a schedule that can be shown to us?
I think we'll have to request that from Fulton Hogan. I'm not too sure of it myself. But I know they do a walk around the entire network every 12 weeks. I did trying to identify faults for 3 months or so. But yeah, we can try and get that for you.
Okay, yeah, all right. And the sweeping, and I just note on page 17, just under that chart, 9.5, that the city centre is not NZTA co-funded. Is that correct? Around the city sweeping?
Through the chair, we'd have to confirm that. I know that we have different practices around the square, which might be a reason why.
Okay.
But I'll
It's in your report, actually, that says the CBD cleaning, which is currently not funded through NZTA co-funding rules. So,
But we do have different practices in the square.
yeah.
Because it's,
But they do, we are funded for the rest of the city and the likes of Ashurst and Bunnythorpe and that?
Yes, it's, all our footpath maintenance and renewals is co-funded, outside the square, so.
Okay. And there's a schedule that could be transparently shown to elected members as well? Or is that sitting with Fulton Hogan as well?
through the chair, we will strive to get you. There are schedules. There's always that balance, same as the road in, where some of it's reactive and some of it's proactive. We've been working very hard to get from Fulton Hogan more upfront and visible planning of as much as possible, so that we can make that visible across the city. So we will definitely seek to get as much as we can out in the way of schedules, just noting that some of it will always be reactive as well. But it's a good idea to get as much out there as we can.
Okay. I realise they've had COVID issues, they've had trucks broken down and everything else, but are we on top of it again now?
Through the chair, we had a conversation, our last conversation with Fulton Hogan was last week, where they reassured us that they are very, very close to fully resourced across the spectrum now, which is we've all struggled with the COVID resourcing challenges, but they did reassure us that they are fully resourced pretty much across the spectrum now.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock, and then we'll go back to members online again.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Thanks, Hamish and Chris. My question is just really around sort of, seeking some reassurance in terms of customer complaints, I guess. Paragraph 4.2 talks about requests going into K-Base, but what I see, I guess, is across social media is that there are fairly frequent comments, I guess, about people who have made complaints where they've received no response in terms of footpath faults. So I guess what I'm seeking is perhaps some comment around across the various media, are we making sure that we actually capture all complaints and respond to those complaints? And are there any sort of KPIs that sit in that space? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hancock. Firstly, part of so all of the complaints are received through Fulton Hogan. All of the roading type complaints are directed automatically to Fulton Hogan. And one of the things that we've instigated in the restructure that happened at Christmas is that we've now got a customer team to make sure that we do better on the follow-ups, because the work might be done, but we aren't necessarily getting in touch with the customer in a timely manner, and we recognise that. So we've actually changed our structure a bit to resource into that.
Thank you. Cheers. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, followed by Councillor Finlay.
Thanks, Mr Chair. So just to follow up around the inspection of the footpath network. So in the report it says that Fulton Hogan do an inspection on a 12-week cycle. So is that of every footpath in the city, that it's visually inspected every 12 weeks?
Yes, that's our understanding. That's what they've been contracted to do.
Okay, so there's a perception from the public, and certainly some of the complaints that I've heard, that we only repair footpaths on a reactive basis. In other words, it's only if a member of the public puts in a complaint that a footpath gets repaired. So can we be assured through this report that in the 12-weekly inspection that there's some proactive work done by Fulton Hogan without requiring a complaint by a member of the public?
So through their inspections, they should be they're uploading the faults or the defects into RAM, which then can be planned for dispatches. So it shouldn't need to rely on customer requests. They should be proactively doing it as capable as they can be. But yeah, as officers, we'll be working with them to try and help prioritise their workload and try and be more proactive rather than reactive.
So that's definitely a yes, though. Sorry, just to interrupt. That's definitely a yes, and it's a good point. We do need to get better comms on that as well, which we'll talk to the comms team about.
I think that would help. But how then do we explain to people that say there's been a significant fault in a footpath on their street for a year or two that hasn't been addressed if we've got these 12 weekly inspections?
Through you, Mr. Chair, as part of that inspection process, they'll be prioritising the defect itself, so they'll be looking at how bad it is at the time that they inspect it, and I guess they're trying to do that consistently across the network, and then they have to juggle off how much work they can do in each month. A K-base helps bump it up a little bit, because the people that see it deteriorating every day, as in the residents, have a vested interest a little bit, so their assistance is appreciated in that space.
Okay, so is there a possibility, if these faults are being logged by Fulton Hogan anyway, is there a possibility of providing a map that the public could log in, well, not even log into, look at online through the council website, where they could be reassured, for example, that, you know, the 3 or 4 faults that are in the stretch of road that they walk down every day have been logged and are in the queue, at least, for repair?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I believe that's something we can share on that sort of basis with the IT team's help, yes.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing would help because I think as the Chief Infrastructure Officer said, you know, we as elected members, we get a lot of complaints about footpaths, and the more information we have, the better. Thank you.
Okay. Can you put your mic on?
We will definitely commit to looking at what information we can get on a routine and periodic basis from Fulton Hogan and how we can improve our communication around that.
Great. Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a budget for footpaths, we have a budget for roading. Do we also have a budget for guttering?
Curb and channel, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do. We have a budget for curb and channel replacement and maintenance.
Okay, so when we get to Broadway Ave, where the footpaths have sunk a little bit and the guttering has raised and it's coming a problem where people are tripping all the time, does that come under the guttering or does it come under footpaths?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in general, the team will try and program their renewals to replace both at the same time if they can, if they're both in poor condition, and try and sort of package that work up so the costs will be split across the 2 different budgets appropriately.
Okay, one very quick question. We have a report on footpaths. Do we ever get a report on curbing come to this council?
Through Mr. Chair, I'll defer to Sarah.
I keep turning the mic off because I'm coughing. But, through the chair, what we're recommending is that previously there were many budget lines that made up all of this work, and so things tend to have been reported independently of each other. What we're recommending is that because all of the work is contracted to Fulton Hogan, that we put all of it into one report so that you can see all of the information in one go, which will include all of the elements of interest, I hope.
That would be a very good idea, actually. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the chance to answer or ask a further question. It arises in what I think I heard was the responses around these 12 weekly inspections, and I may have misheard, but I thought I heard that every footpath gets looked at every 12 weeks, which would be 4 times a year. And I guess, is that right? And if so, what information is it adding to what we already have in the map on page 21, which is faults that are 4 years old.
I guess the 12-weekly inspections, they're more just fault identifications. The condition surveys that should be done every 2 years is more looking at segment lengths, so looking at long stretches of footpath and seeing if the entire section needs to be replaced. But the faults are just smaller ones. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I guess I'm just trying to me, it seems like a relatively inefficient use of resource to put an inspection across the whole network every 12 weeks when we can see in the maps that there's some spots that are huge hot spots, and we can see in the map that there's some spots that are pretty good off. Do defaults arise that fast, and do they get solved that quickly?
Through the chair, I think that the inspection is across the network as a whole, so it's not just the footpaths, it's footpaths, roading, etc. It's part of the inspection regime for Fulton Hogan generally, so they're not just out looking at footpaths. Part of what the 12-weekly cycle was chosen to do was to help us flag early that deterioration, because when things sort of start getting worse, they can escalate quite quickly. So, but to reassure you, they're not just going out looking at footpaths once every 12 weeks, it's looking at the whole end-to-end road.
So is that a foot-based survey then, or a car-based survey?
I'd have to confirm and get back to you on that.
We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. There's no further questions. Thank you to you both for presenting this report. I'm happy to move, it's just one recommendation in the paper to that the annual footpath and pathway report is included as part of the road maintenance contract update for future reports. Second to Councillor Hapeta, open it up for any comment or debate. Councillor Barrett, were you wanting to make comment, or was that from your question still in the queue? I'm just...
that was from my question in the queue, so you can clear that and I'll be back in soon.
Okay, the Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, just one interesting note I just got from the New Zealand Infrastructure Strategy, which is very relevant to what we've just been discussing today, is for every dollar spent on a new capital or infrastructure project, we should be allowing $1.5 for maintenance at least. So that's just interesting as we go through. Look, I realise contracting's a really high trust model, but what I've heard today is just about everything lies with the contractor. The checking, the schedules, and apparently it's every 12 weeks, which is great that there is that amount of checking going on, but I'm not sure what value we're getting out of that as a council and as ratepayers. To me, there's too much trust, and the network is failing by this report. So, we're getting a lot more complaints. We're spending more money. Are we getting what we should be getting? I'd have to say no. So what do we do about it? I do think the system of self-checking, I do question that, and I just ask the officers that they may need to have a look at that. It isn't working at the moment. Maybe it can work when we get back on track, but certainly isn't working at the moment, and I think it needs to be looked into. Look, I'll just leave it at that. I thank the officers for the report. It's pretty sobering reading, but anyway, it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm grateful for the report, and I've learnt some things, I must say, in the presentation of the report and the questions and answers, so that's been helpful. I think, obviously, footpaths are a hot topic. I mean, there's no getting away from that. And there are a few issues that we could be improving on that would take perhaps some of the heat out of people's response to footpaths. The first one is just around communication of how the checks are done, how faults are scheduled for repair, how footpaths are prioritised, a map that enables people to look at their own street and see what faults have been logged and when they're scheduled to be repaired or a length of footpath renewed. All of that sort of thing will be helpful in reassuring people that we are on top of the problem, that we know what's going on, that there is a plan, and that there's a schedule to deal with things. I think what causes frustration for members of the public is just the feeling that there's no, that their complaint falls into a black hole. They don't know what's happening, and they see the same fault in the piece of pavement outside their house for years on end, and they think we're not doing anything about it. So that's one element, I think, where some improvement in comms would really help people to understand what is being done and what work is scheduled and how inspections are done. And the second thing is that, as elected members, we were happy to put more money into footpath maintenance and renewal. And at the last long-term plan, we discussed, how much would be required in order to increase the rate at which faults were cleared and the rate at which renewals were done to reduce the number of complaints and more importantly, to reduce the numbers of accident and injury to members of the public walking along the footpath. And we were told that the amount of money that we put in, there was no point in putting in more because we didn't have capacity to do the work. And I'd be very interested in hearing from officers at any point if they think that more money would result in a faster rate of clearer of faults and a better schedule of renewals. Because honestly and truly, the state of the footpaths is something that we are judged on as a council by members of the public, and rightly so. And I can't really believe it's as difficult as it is to get on top of the problem. So I understand all of the current difficulties around COVID and scheduling and weather and all the rest of it, but from year to year, we want to be seeing an improvement. We want to be seeing that the percentage of grade 4 and 5 faults is getting less, that the numbers of complaints are going down because the numbers of faults are being fixed. And so, I hope that we'll have good communication both from council to the public about what is being done, and also good communication from officers to elected members if they feel that the level of service could be increased by increasing funding or in any other way come to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To me, it's quite simple. We've got 47% of our footpaths are fair condition or less. And if you look at how many kilometres of footpaths there are, $1 million of, the footpath is $500,000 of maintenance is not going to do us justice. Plus, we've had increase in inflation and significant increases in the cost of asphalting, and it's going to get worse because the price of oil is going up every 5 minutes. So I think by 27th of May, when we start doing the deliberations, we're going to have to look at putting more money in the budget for footpaths if you want to increase level of service. So it's quite simple to me, and I don't think you can blame the contractors on this. They've only been involved in this for the last few months. So I think we have to put the budget there and then make sure that we've got the targets and the service levels we want, and then we can measure against it. So we're going to have to increase this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to officers for this report. I hadn't been drinking, but I did find it incredibly sobering. And probably by the end of the report, I felt like I needed to do some drinking. Firstly, to say thank you for the level of information and transparency that is in this report. In particular, I found the map on page 21 of the footpath condition scores, grade 4 and 5, and the very, very unequal distribution across the city, absolutely disturbing and not good enough in my view. We need to start ensuring that we have a very equitable approach to our transport network, including our footpaths, and this does not look like that. So there is definitely work to be done. Again, I appreciate sharing that information has been shared with us. It's been, you know, at least 4 years, according to the report, that these faults have been sitting there. And this is the first time that I've certainly seen a map that actually shows just how concentrated some of those hotspots are. And I would hate to think of what it's like, particularly for elderly or other people with limited mobility living in those areas, actually trying to just get out the front door and get along to the corner, get along to the dairy, et cetera. So thus my focus on ensuring that in the next cycle, we are focusing on these really challenging hotspots and getting some information to us early in the new financial year around where the work's planned and how much of that bucket, however big the bucket ends up getting, how much of that bucket is going to tackle these grade 4 and 5 problems, because it is very disturbing to me to see, you know, whole parts of the city that are pretty much clean as a whistle and other parts of the city that, you know, look like a train wreck. So that needs fixing. In terms of the information to the public, look, this is a sitter for open data, right? Like, we've been talking open data in government forever. Footpaths are a sitter. You should be able absolutely to log in somewhere as a local and say, you know, is that fault logged? And, you know, is it number 1 in the queue or number 6,722? And do I need to do something about it? You know, so if we could get this onto an open data footing sooner rather than later, it'd be absolutely fantastic, and I think would actually take a lot of the heat out of the situation that we face. Surveys, I guess I'm a bit stuck on that in terms of even knowing what happens. If it's not a survey that's actually on the footpath, I've driven by a lot of footpaths, and it's given me absolutely no information about what's actually happening on the footpath. And I certainly haven't seen people in vests walking around on the footpaths every 12 weeks. So I wonder how much of that sort of whole of network survey is actually informing the footpath side of things, and would like to have some confidence in the future about what sort of monitoring is actually being done. As we've heard from councillors Beatty and Johnson in their comments, I do have an appetite for further investment, but only once we're actually convinced that we've got a system that works and that is high accountability and is highly directed towards the areas of greatest need. And I wish I could say that I was at the point of having that confidence at this stage, but I'm not yet. And so certainly any request for funding would need to be very clear about the strength of the system that was going to get the best use of those dollars. And until such time as we have that clarity, while there is a screaming need here for more investment, we need to make sure we have the system in place to actually meet the need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hapeta, followed by Councillor Naylor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks to the officers for the report. It's great to see the transparency in the report. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what has been said already, just wanted to say a couple of points. The Chief Infrastructure Officer did comment that a lot of work has been done in the last 3 months. I think what we want to see as councillors, we want to see this level of work being carried out for the whole full year for the footpaths, rather than see work that's been rushed to get the budget finished for the last part of the year. So I think that would be our preference, to see work for the footpaths done and a programme of work to be done for the full year, rather than see a budget being spent towards the end of the year. I think that is what we want for our transparency for our community, which is what Councillor Barrett was alluding to. The other part of this is just making sure that we know what the work is and we know what the plan is going forward, and that's pretty much my comments. I really don't want to say much more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. My very first interaction with council was in 2001 when I attended a Hokowhiru Ward Committee meeting. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me after that meeting was the number of people that came out on a cold night to talk to the councillors and the ward committee members And the biggest thing that they had to feed back to them about what the whole activity of what was happening with council, the biggest thing they had to talk about was the footpaths and their concerns around some of the state of the footpaths. And I went home a little bit stunned, really, because I thought, given the wide range of things that council does, I was really surprised that that would be the main focus. But I think what it told me was that was something that was really important to them then, and I think it remains actually something that's incredibly important to many people in our community. So I think it's something we do need to do well. However, I would caution the suggestion that the way to do it better is to suddenly throw a whole lot more money at it, because when we look at the information that's in this report, what I see is in the last 2 years, in terms of the maintenance and operations budget that's been provided, 2 years ago we spent 70% of that budget, and a year ago we spent 82% of that budget. And whilst there's good reasons for that, I think we would be running ahead of ourselves if we said we suddenly just need to throw more money at it. In the first instance, I think we need to ensure that we use the budget that is provided to the best we can and monitor those improvements. And I think we can't underestimate the impact that COVID's had in delivering many things in terms of the infrastructure space, but I don't think it would be fair to judge the current situation or the perhaps lack of progress on and suggest that we haven't invested well enough. I think we have done some good steps up in terms of what we're investing in this space, and I'm comfortable with that, but I would be cautious to think that putting more money into it than what's outlined in our budgets as perhaps the way, I don't believe that would be appropriate at this time.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Finlay online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've seen that map of where the footpaths need to be repaired. I noted to myself that there were not that many million-dollar properties in those areas that were heavily needing repair. But I also would like to spend more money on footpaths and get more footpaths done. But what's the use of throwing more money at it when we can't even spend the money we already put into it? If we throw another $100,000 or whatever into footpaths, who's going to do the repairs? Are there contractors out there that can do it? Can the council do it? I don't think we can. So I'm not too keen on throwing more money at the moment until someone can prove to us that the work can actually be done. But as I said, I was disappointed to see the areas that the major areas where footpaths need repairing and how they are in certain areas. Thank you.
Thank you. You come in very late, Councillor Dingwall, but because you haven't spoken, I'm going to allow you to have your say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and apologies for that. I think the only thing that I wanted to add to all of that is that I'm actually interested in that 4.2 where they say that the amount of footpath customer requests has actually gone down over the last 5 years. And that does concern me a little bit in when you're looking at the faults, whether that's people just giving up. And so I'm really interested in seeing what happens when we get more information out there to the public, and whether those customer requests will start going up again, or whether that will still decline, and how that relates to everything as well. So that's all I wanted to add on that point. Thanks.
Great, that concludes comment and debate. I'd now like to invite a vote. We're going to do that by a show of hands. It's just the one recommendation that's been moved, which is in the order paper. I understand it's coming up online. All those in favour, raise your hand. Yep. That's unanimous. Thank you, members. That brings us on to our next item, which is item 7, Infrastructure Capital Works Dashboard for March 2022, and invite Sue Kelly, Project Management Office, to come present.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sue Kelly. I'm the manager of the Project Management Office. Very short report and dashboard. I think I'll take it as read, and if there's any questions, please.
Yep, open it up. The Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thanks, Sue. So just on page 31, just that dashboard, and it gives sort of the budgets and then spent, and I know you've merged the two together, but have you got some rough ideas, percentage-wise, what Capital New, what we're up to at the moment with Capital New compared to budget? Is it 40%? Is it 50%?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't bring the separated ones. I've got the combined amount with me. I can get that back to you.
Yeah, if you could, and again, the same with renewals, if that's 65% or whatever it is. I think it's just quite helpful for us to know. And also, as we're, close to the end of the financial year, just where we might hit would be, and I realise nobody can hold you to that because things might have a mad rush at the end, but just where we're at, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. This is to the end of March, this report. Do we have an update on what's been delivered to the end of April?
I can tell you that we've spent 34 million to date that I was looking at this morning.
34, thank you. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this or not, but at the moment we've also just last month had an update in the financial quarterly report that came to Finance and Audit in April, and that was also on many of the that gave us an update on capital program.
Yes.
But to that end of March as well. Now, some of the information that's in this report doesn't align with the information that was in that report in terms of what our revised capital budget is now and how much we've delivered against that. So has there been any consideration given to aligning this report with the information that's provided in the Finance and Audit Committee report? I know there's been discussion previously about that, and I'm just wondering, has that been further considered?
I believe it's an area that we need to look at the whole reporting side of things in terms of this infrastructure dashboard and how we align that with other work, yes. Sarah, did you want to add more to that?
Through the chair, no, I was just nodding. I think that would be helpful.
So I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask this, but, if the quarterly report is telling us that our revised capital budget is 55 million and this report is telling us that it's 59.5 million, where do we find how do we know which one's accurate? I know we've had is that presuming the 39.2 carry forwards comes off the original total of 104, because that would make neither correct. I'm struggling a little bit at the moment to find a consistent picture on what our current capital budget is in terms of what our revised I know it was 104 million, and now different papers are telling me different things about what our revised capital budget is. What's the best way? Can I have a comment on how the best way to ensure that we've got accurate or consistent information, or where we could find what's correct?
We got a response from Sarah Sinclair, Chief Infrastructure Officer, at least for now.
Thank you. I think that there's some confusion because the dashboard that you have in front of you speaks to forecasts as we revise them through the year. The quarterly report speaks to what was forecasted at the beginning of the year, and that can so that those forecasts don't change. So I believe that the quarterly report speaks to the predicted spend at this time of year based on the initial start of the year spend forecast, whereas the Capital Works dashboard is more mobile in terms of being updated as our forecasts to the end of the year update, which we are very conscious leads to some confusion. What we are striving to do is make sure that the text in the quarterly report also includes the forecast changes that we're making, but I'm conscious that that will be in your next one. It hasn't been in the ones to date. We'll take an action away from this to go and talk to finance about how we align the sort of rapid report dashboard that you get more closely with the quarterly reports that you get.
Okay, so am I wrong in assuming that the revised capital budget has been reduced from 104 down to something less because of the carry forwards that were approved in the Committee of Council process in March?
No, that's correct.
That's correct. Okay, so, and I expect we'll get an update in terms of the Committee of Council in May of what that will look like. But do we have any, if what you're saying is correct, Sarah, that that's something that changes over time and is based on what you think is going to be delivered, what are we expecting that the revised capital budget is as of now? Do we have any idea?
The information is currently being put into the paper that will come up next week.
Okay. Perhaps I'll wait till then.
And I know that there's a slight lag in this document because we've been focusing on that. So there is just that issue at the moment, and we do need to. I can't give you an accurate figure because of that. I haven't got it with me.
Thanks. Perhaps I'll wait till then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Sue, for the report. Seems that the sort of form of the dashboard continues to evolve. Would that be a fair? And can
yes,
you give us
correct.
Can you give us a sense of, I guess, how it's evolved to this form?
I think really what we need, the evolution of it is around trying to provide information that's current to you, so that you can see at a point in time what's happening and how can we make this as current as possible and as useful as possible, so that we can inform you of what's happening.
Thank you.
That's really what we're trying to achieve, to give you information.
Appreciate that answer. And perhaps it's more of a semantic thing in my head then, but when I think of dashboards, I think of, like sitting in my car and there's a lot of dials and numbers, or, maybe a cockpit of an airplane and there's even more dials and numbers. And just wondering is there a lot of, I guess, dials and numbers that are available but aren't in the dashboard, or how have we gotten here?
It's gotten here because this, at the moment, is as we can most easily make this available for you and keep it current. It's certainly, from my perspective, going to be a work in progress.
So in your preferred evolution of this looking ahead, it would start to look more like a cockpit and less like what we're seeing here?
I think that's a conversation we should have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hapeta.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I can carry on that questioning. I'm on page 32 as well, and thank you, Sue. I was just wanting to know a bit more specific. With the animal shelter, I understand it's been affected with the Omicron. I just wanted to know if you had a date of when you'd be able to sort of pick that back up again.
Yeah, we're expecting a paper to come to council at the end of June.
June. And same with the Fitzherbert Women's Changing room upgrade? You've just got a design due completion of early May. Have you got a date on that one?
No, I haven't got another date on that one. I believe that is continuing to progress. I can come back to you if you would like that specifically.
Okay. The social housing one? Nothing on that one? No.
Well, that's a continual upgrade. So work is underway, going through a programme of works with that.
Okay. The Turatea Par site?
That's the crew has all been back on site with that. Work is back underway, and we hope to have it completed by the end of June.
June. Okay. And then the railway road bore?
We are continuing with commissioning for that. Unfortunately, some of the commissioning was affected by staff with Omicron, but it is back underway now. Looking for something by hopefully towards the end of June or early July for completion.
In the urban growth northeast industrial zone?
We're working currently on putting together a procurement strategy around a bundle of works to get that done, because it's including roading, water and wastewater.
Okay, thank you very
That's
much.
underway.
I appreciate those answers. Thank you, Sue. Thanks.
Great. The Mayor?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Councillor Harper stole all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson online.
I took myself out of the queue because Councillor Harper asked my questions.
Great. Councillor Beattie?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Well, Councillor Harpeta didn't ask about Bunnythorpe. So my question is, you've got construction complete, and my understanding is there's some outside work to be done. Has that been completed yet?
I would need to follow up on that, I'm sorry. I believe it has, but I would like to come back with a definite answer.
Okay, thank you. I'll hold you to that.
Okay. Councillor Finlay?
Thank you, Mr Chair. A couple of quick questions. In the railway road bore, you're saying it's going to be completed probably by June, July. Can you tell me when it will be pumping water into the system? And also, can you tell me if it has ever pumped water into the system?
Thank you, and through the chair. I'll take the second question first, and no, it has never pumped water into the system. The first question, when will it pump water? Obviously, the physical construction needs to be completed first. But even when that's done, we're still waiting for scientific lab results to come back around the residence time of the water. So for Te Mata Arawai, our regulator, insist on having these samples done and back before we can confirm that the bore water is in fact secure, and that's the residence time testing. Those samples were submitted before Christmas at the end of last year, and we're still waiting for those back yet.
Thank you. I've got several comments to make, but I'll wait till then. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Mike Monaghan with that response. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Sue. That was helpful. Moving on, just to receive, that the committee receive, I'll move this, that the committee receive the memorandum titled Infrastructure Capital Works Dashboard for March 22. That was presented to the Infrastructure Committee on the 18th of May 22, seconded by Councillor Beattie. Open it up for any comments or debate, and Councillor Naylor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think perhaps having teased some of it, my question, getting some answers to my questions, I think what I'd want to add to that is I do think we probably need to look at what value this report does bring. I mean, on a positive note, it's a snapshot, it's a summary, it's a two-pager. But the comments about does it add value and is it current, I guess I have a question mark around that. I mean, perhaps it's that the timing is that we're only a few weeks after a very thorough, in-depth report at Finance and Audit, which actually gives us a lot more of this information. Perhaps a little bit concerning to me that the numbers, there's not good alignment in terms of some of the information, and I think we need to just look at how we can refine that. But if this report is to continue in this form, I think having it more up to date would add more value, and perhaps us looking at the timing in terms of our financial quarterly report. Really, the information in here, both have been to the end of March. The information in here, it just seems to be a bit more of a summary of what we've already been, the information that we've already been provided. Yeah, I think just perhaps we need to think about the way in which we use our committee time, and if that, at the moment, that doesn't feel like it adds value to what we've already covered. But as a two-pager summary of what we've already been told, it's good. If you only want to read 2 pages, this is a good way to get the information. The quarterly report is quite a long, lengthy, deep dive document. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hapata.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I want to thank the officer for the report. I think it's a very good infrastructure capital works dashboard, and thank you very much for the work that you've done on that. So well done for that. Sorry for the questions that we did ask, that we all wanted to ask the same questions. I think sometimes when you write the report, it does take a couple of weeks for the report to come to the meeting, so that's why sometimes that's where it comes from. So we understand that as councillors, and that's why sometimes asking that information at the meeting, that's why you have to get that information. But thank you very much, Sue, for that.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay online.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Well, long ago, in a place not too far away, in a council chamber, there was a group of staff came to the council meeting and stressed the urgency of getting a railway road bore in place before the Roberts Line bore had to go out for maintenance. And if we didn't get it done immediately, we would be without water. That was many years ago. And we still haven't got any water from it. The maintenance of Roberts Line has been done and completed, and we're still waiting for samples and tests. Now, sometimes it makes me wonder why we get rushed into this sort of work with the threats of running out of water and everything else. And here we are many years down the line, and still it's not running and it's not working. I think it's a bit of a joke, actually. And to see that it's still there. And I just wonder how much of ratepayers' money have we spent and wasted on that bore up until now. Thank you.
I think I just, as chair, councillor, I wouldn't see it as wasted money. It's still it's an asset, and it's just the delay to get its benefit. I think it's probably more to the point. If I could just add that in respect of the officers' work, I guess they have experienced frustrations on getting the results themselves, but I wouldn't say the money has been wasted. Councillor Beattie, were you also wanting to make a comment?
I wasn't going to, but I am now. I mean, in 12 years, I've been on council and never ever heard that we were going to have a lack of water because of that bore. And all I can say is it must be election year.
Yes, it is. And yes, they did.
Okay, we're going to call that closure to the comments and now invite a vote. Yep, all those in favour? I thought we were going to put the recommendation up on screen, but all those in favour, if you can just raise your hands. It's the same one as in the order paper. That again is unanimous. Thank you, members. Finally, item 8, which is our capital works schedule. I invite Sarah Sinclair to make any comment. on this paper?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only comment is that we have requested to move the Memorial Park final implementation report to August, which was originally scheduled for this meeting, just because to run the sort of formal lessons learned and benefits realisation process and getting that written up meant we just ran out of time for this meeting. It was an incredibly successful project, and we're keen to talk about the benefits as well as the lessons. So my apologies, we simply ran out of time to get it on the schedule.
Great. Any questions? Councillor Hancock?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just from the previous item, which was the annual footpath and pathway report, that's annual, and it's going to be included into the road maintenance contract, which is a 6-monthly report. So, just want clarity: is it going to be 6 monthly for the footpaths, or?
Yes, Councillor Hancock, it will be, you'll get all the information 6 monthly from now on. It'll be rolled into that one contract, so you get it all 6 monthly.
Thanks, Chair.
Cool. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question's around the same item on the work schedule, that final item, indicating that it is a 6-monthly report, and just wondering what our options might be, given that the direction arose in March to land that report, perhaps not in this committee, but to get this report through before the election. See, there's an August meeting. Is that possible? Or if not, could we look to move that to another forum in September?
Okay. Sarah, would you have a response to that? That's, I'm sorry, on the following page, which is the road maintenance 6-monthly contract, the query is, would there be an opportunity to have that presented to the August meeting of infrastructure, which is the last meeting of this committee before the end of the triennium?
I'm just doing the maths to my hand, because you got the last one for that in March, but I don't see a problem with that. I think it would probably, I know 5 months, but I think it would be helpful, particularly given that it might help us answer some of the questions that you've raised today.
Thanks. So, yeah, if we could amend accordingly, that'd be great.
Yep. So therefore, we'll just amend that. Instead of saying 2023, we'll say August. Happy to accept that? I am happy to accept that. Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on the work schedule? I'm happy to move that we received the work schedule dated May 22 and seconded by Councillor Beattie. Invite a vote. Just raise our hands. That is unanimous. That concludes our business for the Infrastructure Committee meeting for the 18th of May, and we'll now close the meeting and pass it to you, Councillor Barrett, for next steps.
Thank you, Councillor Dennison. We'll reconvene environmental sustainability at 2:30.